This is New Home Insights, the John Burns Real Estate Consulting Podcast. I'll be your host, Dean Worley. As the title promises, we're going to bring you insights into everything housing, latest trends, innovations, observations, and issues of the day. We'll bring in colleagues here at John Burns and also some major industry players from all across the country. This podcast is going to be quick, fun, but also hopefully make you think. So see you here every couple of weeks. Now let's get to it. Yet another fantastic episode of New Home Insights by John Burns Real Estate Consulting. I'm your host, Dean Worley. Today I have a panel of millennials. We're going to start here on my left with introductions.
This is Kate Seabaugh. I'm a manager in the research group in Irvine, and I am an older millennial.
I am Michaela Sharp. I'm a consultant at John Burns Real Estate Consulting, and I am a younger millennial.
Brag.
I'm Kyle Zier. I'm a manager with John Burns Real Estate Consulting, and I am the oldest millennial of the group.
Not by too much, but
barely a millennial.
yeah.
So today, as you can tell, we have a group of millennials, and we're going to talk really just about how millennials perceive, are impacted by, and see the housing market, both for sale, maybe a little rental as well, by necessity, or by choice. And so let's start right off the bat. First of all, actually, what do you think of the word millennials? Would you rather be, I don't know, the come at me bro generation, or do you like the word? Is it offensive? Is it okay? I can't speak to that.
I don't mind it. Yeah. I know that there's some stereotypes around the word, but I don't really mind being called a millennial.
I think every millennial likes to think that they're not the typical millennial. But it's like, if every single one isn't the typical millennial, it's like you kind of all are,
right?
In some ways.
There's no. Kyle, you're fine with it?
I'm totally fine with it.
Right on. So let's just talk in general. How are you thinking? How much are you thinking? I know we work for a real estate consulting company, so that's hard. But outside of professional, personal, and not just you two, your friends as well. How much do you think about? How much do you talk about housing, the difficulties, the challenges, etc.? Just how do you approach it?
Okay, I'll go first. So I am the youngest of the group, brag again. But most of my friends, it's not really even a consideration other than I can't do it anytime soon. I'm a little bit, probably because of the real estate industry, looking at it a little bit more. I think I like to get an idea of what's out there so that when I am ready, I'm not passing things up because I'm waiting for something better.
That makes sense.
So I'm an older millennial. I would say up until recently, I didn't really give much thought to it. It was always like a longer term goal that I wanted to eventually be a homeowner. But I really think the life stage stuff kicked in for me, just getting more comfortable with where I was with my job and feeling more comfortable that I would stay in Orange County for a longer period of time. I think for a long time, job flexibility was one of the main reasons that I would rent. And I think that that's a big trigger for a lot of older millennials, just more the life stage stuff.
Okay. Kyle, any thoughts?
I've always had a desire to own a home, and I've been looking the last few years, but most people know Orange County is pretty expensive, so that's one of the major concerns. And I'm actually one of those millennials who's lived at home, I don't live at home anymore, for quite a while.
Yeah, who does that?
And, it wasn't bad. You still have your freedoms and parents kind of leave you alone, but you can save a lot of money and still do the things you want and have a good lifestyle at the same time.
But is that a great thing on your Tinder profile? Maybe.
No, it doesn't work so well on that, but
there are some drawbacks, I'm just saying. But, okay, well, in terms of, what do you see then? I guess maybe a little, you should be careful, by the way. We're in Orange County here. I'm not, but you guys are. So we want to be a little sensitive to that. It's a very expensive market, so that's coloring some of your feelings for sure. But
this is Kate. I'm from the Midwest, and I've lived in the Southeast and Texas before I moved out to Orange County. And I would definitely say that my friends in St. Louis, Missouri, which is where I'm from, and in those more affordable areas already are homeowners or are thinking about it. And it really is more of a life stage thing. But I know a lot of people who already own homes and did so in their mid-20s. So I think the affordability component obviously is a factor too.
There are parts of the country where it is that even if it's life stage motivated, it's just attainable more quickly.
Sure, yeah.
In your life than it is here. So, or I should say, any coastal or any other expensive market, high poor affordability market. So is it fair to say that the goal there is still to own a home, and there's still you and your millennial friends, that's still what you want to do?
Yes, I think
I
so.
think so.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the big question is then, what are, as a millennial, and being careful to remember that we're in a high-priced market, what are the biggest obstacles, challenges you see ahead to homeownership?
I think affordability, obviously, I know you just mentioned we're a
Yeah.
high price market, but that's the number one challenge, I think, for us.
Yeah, I would say down payment. I think one of the things is we get stereotyped as not being great savers because we spend money on concerts and experiences and renting. So being able to get enough money for a down payment, which plays into the affordability component,
Right.
part of it
The
too.
down payment is brutally difficult, especially it's a catch-22, right? You live in a high-priced area. That's high price for rent too.
Yeah,
Unless
exactly.
you live in your mom's basement and sacrifice your Tinder pro. But you did mention, I'm sure, yes, live with parents, but they're heavy sleepers. Is that?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Sure. That's important. Okay, I mean, is it down payment? Is it just pure price? Is it both?
I would agree with the down payment. Trying to pay rent in a high-priced area while you're saving at the same time is really difficult. And there's just a lot more things nowadays that you spend your money on monthly with your smartphone and your Netflix subscription, all these boutique gym memberships.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that people really didn't used to have to spend a ton on that now seem like necessities to us, even though they aren't.
And we're finding, in terms of the demographics, that especially in high-priced markets, that homeownership entry level starts later. But the trade-off is that they have had longer to earn more income and maybe save more. But in places where I do a lot of my work in the Bay Area, and yet their down payment might be $250,000 for a townhouse. And how do they do that? They do that because they cash out Google stock, Facebook, things like that. That's not, in most markets, that's not an option. So I do think down payment is a huge hurdle for one of the biggest ones. Anything else that you see?
I don't know if you guys agree with me on this, but I do feel like there's this stigma around job flexibility and kind of life flexibility, and when you own a home, it kind of ties you more to that area. And I think people in our generation like the flexibility of being able to move around and travel and find different experiences. And for me, that was a big thing. I don't know if you, and I think some of my friends as well, that's also a motivator too, is like, oh, do I want to stay here? Do I want to move to New York, or do I want to move to Chicago or wherever? So I don't know if you guys are finding that either, or if that's just more specific to me.
Travel too, right? Millennials, again, a stereotype is they're very travel hungry. I mean, everybody wants to eat, pray, love at some point.
When I think a lot of people say they want to someday move to a big city like New York or San Francisco, and maybe they'll never actually do it, but once you buy your house, you're kind of locking yourself into that idea that you never will.
Gotcha.
Sort of is like the end of, to me, it seems a little bit like the end of childhood and kind of like the flexibility of being in your 20s and kind of being able to move around. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a weirdo like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, but I think once you get past your mid-20s, you kind of get over that.
Yeah.
I know most of my friends who are late 20s, early 30s, they're ready to settle down.
I would agree with that.
And at some point, it gets awkward. So I'm just looking to be flexible. You're 49. And you're a Gen X. Yes. Okay, in the for sale world then, what is it, what most appeals to you? What is the goal there? Are you super realistic because where you live, or what are you looking for?
You mean
in the near term?
Product type?
Yeah, product type,
Okay.
type of house, place.
Are you saying only new or?
Let's say new. Let's say new.
Because I like resale.
Well, you know what? That's a good point. Okay, let's do that. Do you think there is a bias, again, generationally, for new versus resale?
I think so.
Yeah.
Which way?
I think our generation is a lot more about getting a good deal.
Yeah, I agree.
And resale is a better deal.
Yep.
Same with buying a new car. I'm always into just a tiny bit used, so you get the price lower, but
I feel like that's like a reverse stereotype. I think a lot of people think the millennials want the fanciest, coolest thing, and especially when it comes to tech gadgets and all that stuff. But I do think with housing just for the affordability component too. I've looked myself in resale, and I know most of my friends have bought resale.
You're right. That it's a reverse stereotype. That surprises me, and you all agree with it pretty readily.
Well, and it's like a brag now. You tell any girl like, oh, I like your jeans, and they're like, oh, it's $20 at Costco.
Yeah.
Wait, that's a brag?
Yeah. Getting a
Walmart,
great
right?
deal is a brag.
Really? Okay. All right. No, I picked him up off a street person. I love the guy for these pants.
That's the ultimate brag.
Yeah.
Kyle, I'm sorry, you were saying something?
Yeah, I mean, just back on that topic, I think that the goal for me would be to own a single-family detached home with a backyard and a place for a dog and kids to play. But in this market, it's just not realistic. So I'd be willing to settle for a townhome or something cheaper and more affordable that I could actually afford.
Yeah, and again, we see that in all the urban, expensive markets. Again, going back to the Bay Area, the new home sector is completely dominated by attached, fairly dense housing because it's the single family, what you just described,
Right.
2 mil, 3 million, is just not realistic.
Yeah.
Again, but you said, Kate, in the middle, in other parts of the country, they probably have different product preferences because their preferences are being driven by what they know is realistic.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think something too to think about is I'm from the Midwest, and so when I came out to California, where everything is new, or like in Irvine, everything's 20 or 30 years old. I actually don't like that stuff because I'm so used to older communities, and I think coastal areas attract a lot of people from the Midwest or from Texas that want to get into the California sunshine or whatever. So I do think there is. I've even talked with Caroline, another person at John Burns, about this. She's from the southeast, and she likes older communities too. So it was a little bit of a culture shock, I guess.
I was literally just talking with her about that today with Caroline. I'll do a movie reference now that none of you will be old enough or young, but you know what I'm talking about, to get. There's a movie with Steve Martin called L.A. Story, where it's L.A. and he's with someone from not L.A. and he's bragging. Some of these homes are more than 20 years old. So, yeah.
Well, it's just funny because out here you don't see old houses with lawns or anything. It's just because land's so expensive, and it's just what the design is, I guess.
What are some of the trade-offs then when you're thinking about housing? And you can make this a little broader too. Thinking about rental too, for sale, resale, new home. Like is saving money, or lifestyle, or amenities, or mobility? Are you thinking about all those things? All those. How are you calculating those?
So I feel like I've touched on this a few times. For me, it was mobility. That's why I've rented in a few different cities, just because I didn't know where I was going to be for my job and where I was going to be next. And I think also amenities in apartment complexes are definitely attractive, but I've only used the pool at my apartment complex like 5 times. But it's something like, oh, when people come in and I have visitors, or when I drive in, it's like, oh, this is so beautiful and I love this feel. But I don't actually use the amenities, which is kind of silly, but because you're paying for it.
You sure are. Mm-hmm. That is something you hear that a lot with, and maybe again it's just being realistic in terms of what they can afford. But some millennials, a lot of millennials, we found in our consulting, really do want that they're staying in the rental area, the rental space for the amenities. For it's really a lifestyle choice. Not I'm sure there's a mobility factor there, but a big chunk of it is the lifestyle choice, and they can't get that social interaction seen in the for sale environment they can in the rental environment.
Right.
I think you can get it in the new home for sale market. There's a lot of amenities there with pools and stuff.
So in a master plan.
Yeah, a master plan.
You're paying
for
that, yeah. So any other trade-offs or any other kind of, when you think about among housing alternatives?
Do you have any?
No. Living with my parents.
So you're saving though.
Yeah. And I think I would live with my parents until I can get what I want. In terms of housing, I'm not really willing to give up a whole lot. I don't want to move super far out and pay $1 million Uber anytime I want to go anywhere.
Yeah. I think
it's interesting that you just said $1 million Uber rather than have to drive in the freeway forever.
No, because that's not realistic.
I know, but trust me, my generation would not have said.
Yeah, exactly.
I know in part because Uber didn't exist.
Yeah.
I understand that, but it's just even now you wouldn't think that. But that's okay. Well, what do you think of things like driverless cars and stuff like that? Do you think that'll open up you to other parts of a metro area that maybe weren't an option before?
I don't know, because you still have to sit in the car. It still
time.
takes you forever
Yeah.
to get there.
So
Even
you're
if
just a princess who wants.
Yeah. So would you only go coastal or like stay kind of in the area you're in?
no, I would branch out a little bit more. I don't think I'd be willing to give up certain things like a garage.
Okay.
I choose location over like driving to qualify. I mean,
Same.
I grew up with living in Chino Hills, and my mom would commute to Irvine, and she sacrificed so much family time just sitting in traffic to go to work. And I think the younger generation has kind of learned their lesson from their parents.
That's
in that aspect.
That's literally was my next question. Is it going to be like it has for past generations, where life stage dictates eventually? Maybe it's later for millennials, but eventually life stage dictates exactly what you were just talking about, Kyle. Is I'm hearing that no, it might not this time. That this time might really be different. You think? In other words, when you still have that attitude, even when you have, let's say, kids, will you still favor that location and being a close area over the product or the schools that you might be able to get further out?
Yeah. I mean, I'd take a townhome in Orange County versus a detached home in the Inland Empire.
Same.
Yeah,
Just so I could spend more time with family. I don't want to be on the road all day.
Are you bagging on the 909?
Hey, I grew up in 909.
Okay,
I would agree with that for sure. I'm in the market myself, and I'm only really looking at coastal areas, even if I'm going to get a smaller unit, just because, again, I'm not from California. Maybe you two Californians feel differently, but for me, it's like if I'm going to live in California, and probably a lot of transplants feel this way, I'm going to get the most experience and be in the most beautiful coastal location I can possibly afford, or I might as well just go save a lot of money and live in St. Louis.
Yeah. Okay. Kayla?
I think being near family is also incredibly important,
Yeah.
location-wise. For me, especially when I do have kids, I would hope to continue working, and I'm going to need their help watching them. And I think that kind of ticks off the need for amenities as well, because they live in a community with a pool. If I need to go to the pool, I can just bum off of them some more.
It's a good attitude, Michaela. You're gonna bum off your parents until you get just the perfect house.
Yeah.
Great neighborhood, really close
And then
to work.
continue to bum some more when I need.
Yeah.
Yep,
I like
Free
that.
babysitting.
that's
good.
how they like it.
How about the economy? As Kate said earlier, being sort of secure in her job has led her to think about buying. How about from what happened in the last recession or going forward? What happened to the last housing market downturn was the worst since the Great Depression. Has that colored how you look at for sale?
Yes, definitely. But I think for me, I do think prices have recouped, and so that's scary to think that you potentially might be buying at like a terrible time. But I think if you look at it from a long-term perspective, it still makes sense, because you're not just paying a landlord, you're investing in your own equity. So it definitely is a scary thought, though. And for a while, I was almost hoping that there would be a market correction so I could get in at a better price point.
I said that too.
Yeah.
That I hope that.
Yeah, I was hoping that the market almost crashed again, but I was like, I don't see that happening, so I might as well just get in before.
So just to be clear, it was Kate who said she's hoping.
I mean, for my own personal.
Yeah, no, we heard you, Kate.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
But-
not making it better.
But it's not good. I mean, it could go either way, because that has an effect on all of our jobs too, and the surrounding housing market and everything. But it would be. I do feel a little bit like if you bought now, you'd be buying at
the top.
which is a scary feeling.
And I think in my lifetime, that recession is the only real recession that I remember. And so when I think recession, that's kind of what I envision,
That's
the
a-
worst possible case
That's
scenario.
a great point.
And I think we have a little bit different take just from being in the industry. But the fact that we're even still scared of it, and we know everything going on around it, people that aren't in the industry and just know that, associate that with housing, might be even more afraid of it.
That's a good point. I mean, you're right, though. John Burns, we're projecting a pretty mild, when there is an eventual recession, it should be a hiccup. Not nothing like that. But the lesson learned is this ahistorical, aberrantly serious, significant recession. Kyle, do you
No, I think they covered it pretty well. But I think the only thing I'll add is, I mean, interest rates still play a part, and they're still really low historically. You know, my parents probably bought their first home when rates were 12, 15%. So it's still a good investment in terms of that, but prices are kind of high right now, and that does play into my decision to not buy at this point.
How about a horrible stereotype about millennials that I'm going to propagate? Is this who here has taken care of a home? Did you mow the lawn? Did you weed? Honestly, were you guys doing that when you were teenagers, whatever?
I used to have a little landscaping business in high school, so I'm weird. I guess I'm weird.
I mean, the reason I say this is because again, I know this is potentially a gross stereotype of millennials, but is there a concern that you're going to want to do all the upkeep and taking care of a house that you don't have to do in the rental space?
Totally.
Yes, definitely. Which I think is a reason that a lot of millennials gravitate more towards like condos or things that, where there's an HOA or something. I mean, especially for your first house.
Or you can live close enough to Kyle, he can come mow your lawn because
exactly.
because he was a teen entrepreneur with a gardening business or something.
I'm probably the oddball millennial. I mean, I actually enjoy that stuff. I can do a lot of things around the house, so it doesn't really scare me. It's actually like a money-saving thing for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can't.
I'd rather be eating avocado toast somewhere.
That's a good point, though. Right? The other stereotype, essentially, with millennials, at least in bigger metro areas, is that you're still going to want to gravitate towards those cool amenities and places to eat, entertainment venues that you've always been going to. That's why I mentioned Uber, by the way. Even if you move a little ways out, maybe not 100 miles away, but moving a little ways out, Uber makes going back to those cool amenities, even on weeknights, but on the weekends, a much easier thing than it was 10 years ago.
But the price goes up exponentially.
Yeah, you're harping on the Uber price, aren't you?
A little bit further out. Well, because it's something that I've noticed a lot, and I discuss with my friends a lot when they're deciding where they want to rent. It's, okay, well, how much will the Uber back to Newport Beach cost me?
Okay.
And it's like you go another 10 minutes out, and you're paying another $10-20
each way.
I thought about that.
And you don't want to pay more for the Uber than the actual.
It's going out 5 nights a week. Yeah, active. All right, so I'm going to ask you one last question here. If you could move anywhere in the world, money was no object, where would you live? Kate, go.
I love Orange County, so I'd probably live in Laguna Beach. If I could afford a really nice place in Laguna Beach, that's where I'd be.
With a nice view, water.
Yep.
All right, Kayla.
I think I would second Laguna Beach, except for the fact that there's only that one kind
there's
of
some
road
traffic.
that gets there, and if you go in the summer, sometimes you're backed up.
Yeah.
I might say Irvine.
Oh God.
Yeah.
You disappointed an entire generation.
I know. I'm sorry. It's not a popular opinion among people my age, but
Worse than Hitler. To a lot of millennials.
Irvine's cool. I mean, I like Irvine. It's a nice area, but beach, coastal, you wouldn't. Where are you gonna go in Irvine for unlimited?
I don't know.
Turtle
But
Ridge
just
or
to be
something?
close to work, really short commute,
Yeah, you're the
and then
worst
close
person.
to my family.
Okay, all right.
So
You're
I-
gonna mooch off. I'm used to
Yeah, exactly. How do I mooch if I'm that far away? Think about the
He
Uber
just said
price.
money is no object, and you're like thinking about work and all this stuff.
Your mom Ubers to you to help you out.
That's true.
Laguna Beach.
Okay.
Kyle, where would you
I would be somewhere in the mountains, preferably in a state with low or no state income tax.
There you go.
Wow, you sound like a militia. you might be thinking Idaho at this point.
Maybe.
All right.
Might work.
We've learned a little about Kyle here and Michaela. Michaela's a moocher. Kyle, future revolutionary. He likes Red Dawn, apparently. And Kate is going to live on the beach. Kate gets my vote on where to live. I would probably do that too. It's interesting. None of you said I don't know, France or something like that.
I don't speak French.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's recap real quick for our discussion with millennials and housing. We found that yes, price makes the for sale market, at least for sure, seem pretty unattainable, or at least difficult, or at least far from the future. Admittedly, we might be a little colored there by being in Southern California here. That obstacles other than affordability include down payment and the lack of being mobile and flexible once you purchase a home, that millennials are interested in getting a good deal over maybe even over a new home, which surprised me. And that trade-offs include mobility, as we talked about before, and that location is pretty darn important, even over the idea of drive to qualify to get in that family-friendly home. You're going to be much more concerned about where you live and how close you are to work and friends and things like that. Does that sound fair?
Yes.
All right.
Good
Well,
summary.
I appreciate our panel. It's Kate, Michaela, and Kyle. I'm Dean. You can find us on our website, realestateconsulting.com. Our Twitter is at JBREC, at JBREC. And as Richard can tell you, we're on MySpace for you guys, for you millennials. We're on MySpace and I believe Instagram. And I think we'll be on Twitter as a company, which makes no sense.
All right.
So thank you for listening. Until next time, we'll see you then.